right, I think we're ready to get started.
Yes, we are.
So welcome to the session on Azure. I think everybody is pretty excited, thank you, Marco, about the cloud. We're here to give you what we hope is a great overview of what it means to have NAV and GP in the cloud on Azure. So our intention is to give you a great overview. We won't go deep into either the technical or the business, but we'll give an overall idea of it. And at the end, we expect that you will feel pretty good about that. So as introductions, my name is Elizabeth Alexander. I'm a director of product marketing in the worldwide team. And I have the pleasure of working with the Azure product.
Yeah, hi, everybody. I'm the noisemaker with the microphone. I'm sorry about that. So my name is Marco Perisic. I'm a group program manager on Dynamics NAV. So I'll hopefully provide you some technical, but not too technical insights of how we accomplish all this.
So before we get started, we have a really exciting opportunity for those of you who stay around for the whole session. We're going to be handing out some very delicious candy, and in that candy there is a secret prize. Well, it's not very secret. It's sitting up here on the counter. You have the opportunity to win a Surface. So stick around. We'll be handing out that candy, and you may be the lucky winner. So I think you've all heard the news. We're in the cloud. We're extremely excited about that, and so are some of our early adopters and customers who are already up there. On the left, you'll see a picture of an actual customer of one of our partners, Azure, and of course the date that we released, which was April. So it's been just a few short months since we released this capability to all of you. But it's something we've been looking forward to, all of us, for a very long time. So a lot of excitement around that. So we wanted to show you a video from partners' point of view about Azure.
There won't be a lot of products that will, I think, marry the ease of deployment and use from a cloud perspective with the level of functionality that we bring to the table at a cost-effective price point. So those combination of factors, I think, will be very exciting for the nonprofit marketplace. We're looking forward to it.
They're mitigating hardware cost for sure, and then on the software side, they're mitigating a lot of the upgrade cost because we build that into the subscription pricing. So, they're current always. They don't have to worry about upgrades. That's just taken care of automatically for them as they go through.
The very first customer meeting, we speak to the customer, teach them a little, listen to them, and when we're done, we pass them a mail with the NAV in the cloud, and they click one link and they're up running. They can try it out.
We don't have to worry about platform stuff. We can worry about functionality that our customers need. Line of business type of application, fundraising, awards, those types of things. We can continue to focus on those while the platform stuff just takes care of itself. And we can monitor it more than we could ever on-prem. Because once you give your software to an on-prem, they're going to run it and you really don't know what they're doing with it or what the experience is like with it. We'll be able to put metrics in the software now to actually track, how long were they in this area of the software, what was the feedback and those types of things, where we could have never done that on an on-prem biz. So we're quite excited about the analytics type stuff eventually that we can evolve to so we can see how people are using our software so we can improve it.
Competitively speaking, we want to be able to position offerings that don't force a customer to buy or deploy a particular way. For my competitors that aren't necessarily in as flexible a scenario, it puts us in a pretty unique position to deliver a solution based on what the customer would choose to deploy, as opposed to forcing them to buy one way or the other.
So those were words from a couple of our early adopter partners and the TAP customers that they brought live on Azure in the last few months. We'll talk a little bit more about the value proposition and what they found in their experience. But right now I want to tell you a couple of these stories, both from the partner's perspective and also from their customer's perspective, because truly the value has to be there for both parties, right? So on the left, you see a very happy customer who is using NAV on Azure. They're a print broker. And as a print broker, their entire business is all about matchmaking between a customer and exactly what they want printed and a vendor who can do that job for them. Now, that's a pretty tricky proposition because if you get it wrong, you as the broker are on the hook, and it'll cost you money and time and potentially future customers. So this is pretty important. So, what PrintVis does is, and they are an ISV in our channel who does printer extensions to NAV as an ISV, and they sold them the Azure product. Why? Well, because these guys need to be on the road. Anywhere, anytime, they need to be able to talk to the customer, take a picture of the thing that they're trying to reproduce, send that to a vendor, make it right there and say, did I get it right? Can you confirm that I've got it? And the funny thing is, Wilhelm doesn't really think about the cloud. He doesn't really know he's on the cloud, but he just knows it works and meets his business needs. So that's a pretty awesome story and a great fit for the cloud. But what about PrintVis? What about their story? Well, they're in a very competitive market in the printing industry, and it's one that is aggregating very quickly. So there are fewer and fewer vendors and more powerful competitors for them. So Azure gives them the ability to meet a whole new customer demand in a very modern, up-to-date kind of way, as well as continue their kind of higher-end, more customized implementation. So it gives them a really competitive edge in the world that we're in today. So customer, partner, both great wins. So what about Abakian and Nilfisk? I'm not that great at my Danish, but I'll try. So they're a Danish partner, also in our early adopter program. And they have gone after cloud very seriously. They are the first to, I think, reach 7 customers already live on Azure with the solution. And Nilfisk is a great story for us. It's a very large company with tens of thousands of employees. It's global, worldwide. And most of their regions run on SAP, but they aren't running on SAP in Asia. And in fact, they're running on Azure in Asia now. So why is this a great thing? Well, they were on the cloud, but they were using a local hoster. What was the problem with that? There were latency problems, there were printing problems. This was costing them hundreds, if not thousands of hours, delays in productivity. Orders weren't getting sent out and put into the production system quickly enough, so it was a real problem for them. They migrated that whole system to Azure for 3 countries in Asia in 4 days. They're up and running, and they love it. So there's another great story. Abakian sees cloud as the future, and so they are, as I said, absolutely after this business model that we've all heard about. They're doing it already. So a couple of stories we just wanted to show you, because the real point of what we're trying to say right now is it's real. We've talked about Azure, and we've talked about NAV, and we've talked about GP in the cloud for quite some time now. And what we're telling you today is it's arrived, it's here. Partners and customers are using it and using it very, very successfully. So let's talk just at a kind of a high level about the business model around Azure, because there are many out there in the cloud, right? And so we want to be really clear with you what is the business model and what is the opportunity for you. So this is it fairly simply. It's NAV or GP, but it's the Dynamics partner, those of you in the room, taking one of our products, putting it up on Azure, and that really is essentially what we're talking about when we talk about cloud service for our ERP customers. What this means is it is a through partner hosting. Now, there's some complexity for partners in that model, but there's also some great benefits. One of the great benefits is in the cloud, the person who has that customer relationship really gets the benefit long-term, especially on an annuity-type license, that revenue keeps coming in, but also that opportunity to provide that customer with more services in an ongoing and kind of seamless manner. So that's a great benefit to partners in this model. So we get the question, well, who can do this? Who can put a solution, GP or NAV, on Azure? And the answer is any of you, anybody who wants to, who can procure a Dynamics license. You have to be a partner such that you can do that. But it's possible for any of you to do it. The next level of question is sort of who ought to, or who should do this. And what we're going to talk about today is really about a business that's running at scale. So it's not necessarily the right thing to do yourself if you're only going to serve a couple of customers in the cloud. You're probably better off talking to a hosting company who are providing services on Azure and kind of run that way. But if you're serious about cloud, there's probably no better platform than Azure to go live on, because we'll talk about it a bit later, the advantages of the Microsoft platform, but they are many. There are many. So hosting companies, we have several hosting companies who have kind of tooled with Azure as a platform, so they have their own hardware, but they also have the ability to provide cloud services, whether it's deployment, billing, maintenance, all of those type of things on Azure for you. So you can either do it yourself, or go through another party. So what version of ERP products? I think most of you probably all know this, but it's really only our most recent products that we have tuned and made really fit for Azure. It's not that you can't put another solution or another version on a VM, but we don't recommend it. These are the ones that we've done the work for to make it better as a hosted product. So these are the two. You'll notice for NAV, it's the FP1. You need that for GP. It's exactly what we shipped. Now, I'm going to point out one advantage of this, and that's the product, NAV or GP 2013. It's the same that you could deploy locally for a customer as it is in the cloud. There's no difference. If you build IP, you build it once, and you can deploy it in both places. There are, of course, concerns and things you need to think about when you tune for a cloud hosted, but in fact, you could even port somebody back and forth pretty easily. So those are the product versions. And I'm going to touch on licensing only for a moment, and we won't go sort of deep into the pricing aspect, because that would take a whole session all by itself. But these are really the components that you need to think about. The Dynamics license. Some people think cloud equals subscription, but it's not true. We have the flexibility, unlike some of our competitors, that cloud doesn't automatically equal subscription. People will like that often, but you could take a perpetual license and put it on the cloud if that's the better option for your customer and for your business. So the license is flexible. You can put perpetual, you can put a SPLA license up there, and if you have access to our pilot subscription, you can do that as well. You'll also need SQL Server, just like you do normally for NAV or GP, and there's a few options there as well. You can use SQL SPLA. You an image that has SQL on Azure already and pay in sort of a consumption-based for SQL, or you can take advantage of license portability, and that will allow you to take a customer's license and put it onto the cloud. And then finally, of course, you need Azure, and Azure is available as a subscription. There's a portal. You can sign up for a free trial anytime you want, and so that's the third component that you need. Azure is a pretty straightforward subscription model. There is a calculator. You decide what size of an instance you want and how much database you want, and you basically sign up for a subscription on those conditions. And there's a little bit of variable cost in there, but actually that's the smallest piece of the stack is variable. Most of it is a fixed cost. So that's a little bit about licensing, and we're not going to spend a whole lot more time on that. So really, that's in very much a nutshell. That is the ERP value proposition in the cloud. It's your expertise as partners, the things that you already know, products you already know so very well, and how to explain those and sell those to customers. It's our 2013 products. Both of those have gotten rave reviews from you, who are our hardest critics most of the time. The reception of the 2013 products basically is the best products that you've ever released for NAV and GP. And we're really, really proud of those. And then, of course, Windows Azure, which is really an amazing enterprise investment for Microsoft. And what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Marco to talk to you, about the technical model.
Yes, so I was asked to come here and give you a bit of a technical insight of how do we accomplish what we did on Azure with NAV and GP. So I don't want to scare you because I'm not going to show you code. I'm not going to go into fine technical details. Microsoft is a company about technology. And as such, technology is not there for the sake of technology. It's for the sake of providing value. So I'm going to show you what we did in order to generate value through technology. So the technical model is, I kind of break it down, or rather Elizabeth broke it down really well in saying there's three components to this entire venture on Azure. There's you, the partners, then there's the Azure platform, and then there's the ERP platform that together combined makes the software as a service for customers. So I'm going to talk about, well, I won't talk about you because you know who you are, but I'll talk about Windows Azure, and I'll talk about the ERP platform, and then at the end I'll talk about how these things come together to deliver value. So first thing we're going to get into is what is Windows Azure Infrastructure Services? So if I take the official definition, I'll read it off the screen. Windows Azure is Microsoft's cloud service platform designed to host web services and applications in Microsoft-owned internet-accessible data centers. Absolutely correct. What that really means, to demystify it a little bit, is it's really essentially a whole bunch of racks of servers that host a whole bunch of VMs on it. Now, as such, that's really no news because we had VMs and we had servers for the longest time. So what is really the magic of Azure? Well, the last part here is really where the magic happens. It's a number of supporting services that give you added value on top of standard VM virtualization. So I'm going to give you a sneak peek, actually, into a real Azure data center, just to understand the volume and power of this technology. So essentially, it's data centers around the world. And what you see here is a Chicago data center. I think this information might be slightly outdated, but we're talking about 700 square feet of room. There's room for about 150 containers. Each of the container contains about 2,000 servers in that one container. You see the containers over here. They're sitting in a large space. Inside of a container, there's 2,000 servers, which all together provide, in a data center such as Chicago, around 4 million virtual machines in a single data center. It's a lot of technology, a lot of compute power. And they do all sorts of crazy stuff. Like, for example, to optimize for cooling, they have to increase the humidity in the containers. But if you increase it over 80%, you get condensation, and water and server is not usually a good combination. So this is really to spell out amazing technology, amazing compute power, and amazing opportunity for you and for the customers. So what is infrastructure services? Well, the infrastructure services is the core of the Azure platform. It's the virtual machines. And as such, the virtual machines, other than the fact that they provide you the compute power, they're also a type of technology. The best thing about it is a technology that you're used to. We've been using virtualization and virtual machines for many years. So there shouldn't be any surprises here that will stop us from getting into the cloud. The other thing it offers is enterprise-grade support, and that's not to be underestimated. When you are dealing with a data center of this size, when you're dealing with Windows Azure, you're dealing with global reach, you're dealing with security, you're dealing with privacy. There's only a handful of people, if not less, that have access to these servers, which is extremely important. We're talking about stability, reliability, geo-replication, data backup, data security. All these things you don't get from a next-door hoster. You can only get it from enterprise-grade cloud, such as Windows Azure. This one is really important. Excuse me. Provisioning on-demand elasticity. When you have a data center with so much compute power, well, there's a few customers that need all that compute power. But there's a lot of customers that need a little bit and a little bit more of that compute power at a time. So provisioning on-demand elasticity enables you to get as much power as you need and not spend too much. In other words, a consumption-based pricing. So you only spend as much as you need. You don't need to overspend in order to address peak usage. The last bit is also around the attached services around Windows Azure. So monitoring, alerting, and autoscale. When you are dealing with a volume hosting business, you have volume of customers. When you deal with a volume of customers, you can't go in and by hand check each customer and see what they're doing. You have to have services that tell you what's happening with the customers. Azure provides that. You have to have alerts saying, all of a sudden, 2 of these servers here are going down in performance. What can I do about it? Even more, you can do things like auto-scale. So if you realize you not have enough compute power to handle a high demand, you can set up Azure to automatically add servers to your scale group, and then afterwards, when you don't need that power, to remove those servers. So again, you only spend as much as you need. So this curve here, actually this graph, illustrates that really well. And I can only point to one screen at a time, but I think you'll get the point. The thing here is that this is, cloud usage is not typically something which is flat. There's a variance in consumption. And the demand goes something like this. It might be down low at this point, and then you have a peak of demand where you need a lot of compute power, and then you have a stable demand afterwards. Now, typically for retail, that's Christmas. If you're selling online tickets, it's big shows. If you're into financial services, it's tax season. But you have these peaks in demand. Traditionally, in an on-prem business, what you have to do is you would have to allocate your resources to be able to address the highest peak of demand. And other than the fact that you're overspending, it's also the fact that you have to be pretty good in predicting exactly how much resources you need. So you have to know that you need to buy this much servers, or compute power to abstract it, and then you keep that for the entire time, even though you're only using that resources at this point in time. In other words, all this space here is wasted resources. You're paying for the compute power you don't need. Now, what Windows Azure gives you is the ability to do something like this, which is as your peak increases, you allocate resources in Azure, and then afterwards you deallocate them. So you only pay for what you use. You don't pay for what you don't need. And that's one of the key value propositions of Azure. So again, as I promised, I'm going to talk about some technology, and you don't really need to analyze the details of it, but this is just a 10,000-foot overview of the 3-tier architecture we have in our ERP products, NAV and GP. And it really comes down to, we have a number of different clients. We have the middle tier, our servers, which provides the business logic, compute power. And then we have the SQL Server, the backbone of a system, which securely stores your data. So what we did, essentially, is take this entire machinery and lift it up in the cloud. And essentially what happened is this. So now instead of having physical servers on-premise, which run the NAV server and the SQL Server, now we have virtual machines on Azure that run the NAV server and the SQL Server in virtual machine boxes. And of course, secured and enabled by the Azure attached services and infrastructure services enable you to do this efficiently and fast and effectively. So then you might ask yourself, well, what's the big deal? We use virtual machines for the longest time. We've taken a service, put in a virtual machine on Azure. What's the big deal? What did you actually do about the product? Well, it turns out that it makes a pretty big difference if your virtual machine is in your basement or 100 miles away from your customer. So our teams are pretty good at a lot of stuff, but we can't really change the speed of light. And what that effectively means is you suffer from latency and performance hits and other sorts of things. So in this next section, I'll talk a little bit about what we did to tune our ERP platforms to enable them to live comfortably and efficiently in this Windows Azure cloud. And I'm not going to talk about it purely from just technology, again, for technology's sake, but to understand what value propositions this brings as well. So I mentioned if you have a virtual machine which is far away, then you got a latency problem. There's just time that takes for a signal to travel to the server and for it to travel back. Now, there's nothing you can do about that. That's just the nature of physics, and there's really little you can do about that. But what you can do is you can minimize the number of requests that the client sends to the server and the server sends to the SQL database. In other words, what we did is we really reduced the chattiness of our servers. So the clients talk less to the servers. They really combine a request and send it over, return it. And the same thing, servers combine a request in a SQL base and return it. So this is one of the minor things we did. We pretty much re-engineered the data stack. But it's really essentially enables you to have a smooth, performant experience in the cloud. A lot of software, a lot of systems you move in the cloud, all of a sudden, for this reason, for the latency problem, don't perform that well. The other thing you have as a problem is you have your own network domain in your own company, in your own organization. When you move a virtual machine to a data center, well, that machine is typically not on your domain. And yes, you can domain join, and there's latency issues with that and so on. But essentially, you're moving outside of your domain. When you move outside your domain, you can authenticate users using the user identity they have within the domain. So what you need to do, you need to provide alternative ways for authentication. So what we did is we introduced username and password authentication for simplicity, the oldest way to authenticate. And we also tapped into ACS, which is Azure Services for Advanced Federated Authentication. Sounds very complex, but it really means is you can identify your users, you can authenticate from any online ID they come from Live ID, Yahoo, Google, even Facebook. You can authenticate users in a cloud. And that's really powerful because you don't have, especially for customers, you don't have to have them added to your domain. We also have an issue around resources. Well, you know, when you're sharing resources in a data center, you have to be optimal about resource usage. Cost of goods sold becomes a really important thing. So we took our servers, we took our technology, and we basically went on a diet. We minimized resource consumption. We were very careful, but we cache, we don't cache. And the result of that is certainly our new ERP platforms in NAV and GP, the most performant ERP platforms we had to date. In some cases, orders of magnitude less resources and more performant. We also did things around availability. One thing that's extremely important about cloud is not just the technology, it's not just the service, it's also how the customers see the cloud. The customers see the cloud as something where they can access it anywhere. That's the whole point. I can be on any device, anywhere on the internet, on my Windows client, and I should be able to access my cloud service. So what we did, introduced the web client, we introduced click once deployment, we introduced the SharePoint client in NAV. And what that enables you is to actually reach your ERP system from anywhere you are. You don't have to install and monitor and administrate clients, rich clients of client machines. You can access your cloud from anywhere you are.
That's a good moment to kind of point back to that Nilfisk case that we talked about in the very beginning. If you remember, that print broker is mobile. He's going anywhere, and he needs to access his system at all times. It's a perfect example of how that availability is really impactful, particularly to customers who have those kinds of needs.
That's right. And if you pay attention carefully to that picture, you'll see that he has another technology on his desktop, which typically design companies and print companies have. And this also means it's multi-platform. Yeah. So you extend your reach to different types of platforms you can consume the web services on, or our cloud services on. Again, when we talk about cloud, it's hard not to think about volume and not large number of customers. And as I say, you know, volume aspirations means volume operations. So if you want to have a lot of customers, you're going to have to deal with a lot of customers. And if you want to do that, manual labor is not an option. You have to be able to automate. So what we have done is we have enabled automation of a server, so you can automatically provision servers, automatically configure them, automatically add users. You can do this through scripts. You can do this through a user interface on your website. But the key thing is automation here. Beyond that, what we've done is traditionally our servers on-prem were these black boxes. You really didn't know what's going on inside. Well, we expose a lot of health data from the servers, so you can actually understand the health of the servers even before the customer calls you and complains about lack of performance or what else might be going on. So these are some of the key things that you have to think about when you go at scale. When it comes to the configuration, again, when you're dealing with volume, you have to think about what time you're going to spend with a customer configuring a customer. You cannot spend a lot of time manually configuring a customer. You need to enable customers to have preset packages where they can get up and running really fast. Rapid start services and rapid services, rather rapid start with rapid services enables you to do exactly that. It enables you to have a number of preset packages where you can actually get a customer configured, up and running much faster than before. So
before I think we go into this piece, maybe it's worthwhile just kind of summarizing where we've come so far. So if we kind of reverse order, you've just heard from Marco about all the very serious investment that we've done in product to make this a great experience for you and for customers working with Azure. And then if we back up one more step, you heard something about Azure, right? And that was really just a small window and a small kind of information about the incredible capabilities of Azure, which include redundancy and failover and just really enterprise-level cloud platform. Why is that important? We have a lot of respect for our partners and hosters out there that have services. But if you think about the global reach of Azure and you think about the power of the compute that you saw, this is a scale of opportunity and robustness that you just generally can't get locally. I think that's fair to say. And that's no disrespect. It's just a comparison, right? And then finally, backing up one more step, we talked about the business model, about being partner-hosted. But now you see, when we say partner-hosted, we don't mean sort of just generic hosting. We really do mean hosting products that have been tuned, on the Azure platform. That's a meaningful differentiation. We talked about flexibility and the licensing so that you can, both in terms of what's profitable and right for your business, you can offer the customers the right combination. And then there's tooling and all the rest of it that you saw to help you with that. So I just kind of wanted to go back up before we put all these things together in kind of a very tactical way and just kind of summarize. We hope that now you see kind of the mega trend behind the Azure opportunity. So with that, I think we'll go on and kind of talk at a little more detail about the actual things you can do with Azure that will provide value to your business, to customers, and actually help you sell, deploy, and monitor Azure deployments. So let's move on.
Absolutely. So we talked about the Azure platform itself, as Elizabeth mentioned, and the ERP platform as well. So those two combined will deliver the software as a service as an opportunity for you to deliver software as a service. So the question is, why do you want to do that? What are the value propositions here? We don't want to do that for the sake of just having a cloud sticker and being in a cloud. There's actually strong business value propositions that emerge along every step of the way you're dealing with a customer when you do that. And that's what we're going to show you now. We're going to show you a little journey from technology to value. And we're going to go step by step in interaction with a customer and show you what that interaction looks like and what benefits you get from the ERP platforms, Dynamics ERP platforms on Azure, compared to traditionally the way you do it on-premise.
Let's go. So let's talk about pre-sales a little bit and how can a hosted solution on Azure help you to sell the solution, your product. So what do you say? What can they do?
Well, when you're in pre-sales, when you're actually dealing with a prospect, you actually have a situation where frequently you want to be able to showcase and demo your solution. That's what a customer or the prospect is there for. He wants to see what you got to offer. Now, see, the thing about that is that, yes, we've done it a lot, many times. And typically what happens, we have these setups on our laptops that we take to customers, and then those setups, it happens in different ways. Sometimes they get out of date, sometimes they didn't refresh right, sometimes they just don't work. The night before the demo to the customer, for some reason it fails. Now, what happens with Azure, it gives you the opportunity is to provision when you need, on demand, a fresh instance of your product that you can just showcase to your customer. You can refresh it anytime you want. And even more important, you can do as many as you need. You don't have to pre-buy, I don't know how many laptops in order to be able to demo to customers. You provision everything as you need.
In a very time-efficient way, by the way.
Oh, yeah. This happens in minutes. We're not talking days or hours. This happens really, really fast.
So there's one thing at the very beginning of the process. Now we'll talk a little bit about experience, and I'm going to have a little fun debate with Marco that he doesn't know about yet. But go ahead. Let's talk about trials.
Okay. Tell me.
So trials are a really interesting thing in the cloud. And we have, with many partners, many discussions about, should we do trials or should we not do trials? When do you do trials? When do you not? So we'll start with the proposition that Azure is a great place to do trials if you're going to. But there's some interesting information about, do trials help you sell or not help you sell? And I don't know, I imagine some of you even have opinions yourself right now, but why do you think that might be a problem?
Well, I can think of a few different reasons.
That's
a great way to buy time. We don't know the answer to the question, by the way. I mean, of course, there's certain things that, from the perspective of capacity and provisioning, that come into play. So, for example, trials are expensive. It's the money you pay for resources that you don't get anything back, at least not immediately. It's a cost of sale. You increase the cost of sale. So typically what happens, and there's a pattern, and this is actually a detrimental pattern, is that companies allocate, partners or customers, they allocate much less resources, minimum possible resources in order to provision trials. And that's great because they minimize the cost. But what frequently happens is if you get into a conference and all of a sudden you have thousands of prospects wanting to try a system, they all log onto the system, try it out, the performance basically is nowhere near to desirable, and they say, this doesn't work for me, it's too slow. Now with Azure, what you can do, again, provisioning on demand, we did this for convergence, actually. We allocated 1,000 virtual machines, created a QR code, partners, customers can scan it. They could get immediately provisioned instance on Azure, kept it for 2 weeks. After that, deprovisioned it, only paid for what we use.
Did anybody here take advantage of that? Anybody? Yeah? Good. A few of you. So, and then there's some discussion around the actual sales motion about trials. I think if you're familiar with NetSuite and some of our other online competitors, most of them do offer a trial. And so it feels like a competitive thing that we need to do. We have done some research that tells us, though, that trials in what otherwise could be a quick sale will actually slow it down. And so I asked the question, to trial or not to trial, and that depends. But to Marco's point, if you're going to trial, you need to have the environment, the correct environment sized correctly to give a good experience. But you also need a customer that's willing to, or that you will get more profitability out of in order to justify the kind of time. Unaccompanied trials almost always result in no sale. So if you're going to do trials, you have to expect to take the customer along the journey in order to close the sale. That, as Marco said, that takes time, that takes money and resources. So just kind of an interesting little debate as we get into this business much more, because the default is we should all do trials. Yes and no, right? Yes and no.
Certainly something to think about.
It's something to think about, that's right. So what about preparing for a customer on Azure?
And on-prem. How
and
you typically
on-prem,
do.
sure.
Right. So, I mean, okay, let's just say now the trials worked out and everything is great, and you had a company trial and you have a customer which is extremely excited about your solution, ready to go. And sometimes, a lot of times, it's time critical when they go. And, well, you know what? If you're on premise and you have to order hardware, and you need to order IT professionals if you don't have them as staff, or subcontract people like that, that takes time. It just creates a lead time to the customer going live. It creates a lead time to the customer getting the value that they're there to pay for in the first place. On Azure, this is almost instantaneous. You can pretty much provision as you go and immediately get going. All you need to do is get licenses, subscribe, and you go with the service. And that's a very, very attractive opportunity for customers that you don't have to explain to them why they need to wait for either, I don't know, the hardware vendor to be available or the IT pro to come back from vacation for the next 4 weeks in order to get things done. I think that's very attractive.
So it takes a lot of complexity out of the process and makes it quite straightforward.
It takes the complexity and also increases the speed at which you can deliver the value to the customer.
Yep.
Together with configuration and rapid start.
Yeah. So, so that kind of touches on some of the deployment aspects. Is there more that you'd want to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you know, if you ever, I'm sure a lot of you done like on-prem customer deployments, but the thing is when you deal with hardware, you're dealing with all sorts of configurations of hardware. I mean, first thing, you even need to know what type of hardware to recommend to the customer. What do they need? You know, how big of a machine? How many megs of RAM, gigs of RAM? How many gigs of disk space, processors, all that stuff? It's, you know, it essentially increases complexity. On Azure, you have a very simple parameter to play with. What size of machine do you want? And you can adjust it according to your resource utilization. Everything else is standardized. You don't have to think about it. You get out of the box exactly what you need. So that's all done for you.
I think kind of going back to the video that we showed in the very beginning, if you think about Brandon Taylor, who talked about the nonprofit
That's
world,
right.
he's from Serenic. He said, with this, I don't have to worry about platform, I don't have to worry about infrastructure or machines. I just need to go spend my time actually figuring out how to make our solution better for our customers. So there's a positive opportunity cost in this case that
Absolutely.
Azure helps you.
And it's also about, sometimes there's resources wasted in this process. I've been to implementations where literally I would see implementation consultants sitting there waiting for the IT pro to install everything for days. They're sitting there on payable hours, on billable hours, and just waiting for somebody to complete the work. You don't need to do that. It's done instantly, automatically. Also on configuration, I mean, each one of these systems, SQL, virtual machines, there's tons of parameters you can configure, different things you change. A lot of flexibility, a lot of power. But sometimes you don't need flexibility. You want simplicity. And Azure offers you that because right out of the box, it's set up for you to use the way you need to use it.
Right. And then in production, so going live, there's lots of benefits to being in the cloud in terms of going live with customers.
Yes, absolutely. It's also about how quickly can you deliver a solution in production? How quickly can you switch to production? Frequently when you're doing all sorts of things around moving from a pilot phase to the production phase, again, there's delay in the time it takes for you to get to the customer. Sometimes you don't really know how many customers from the pilot phase are going to move directly into production or how many customers you will have in a pilot phase. Typically what people do then, they suffer sort of from the pilot production syndrome where they actually allocate everything as if it is production early and take that initial cost, even if it's only a few customers or a few users they're going in the pilot phase with before they actually go into production.
If you think about, again, the video and Abakian's comments about how they can basically show the customer, here's your system, send them an email with a link, and they're live. And now they're doing that in 6 hours instead of 6 days or longer. So very quick time to value for the customer and very rapid implementations for you.
That's right.
And then servicing, because obviously in the cloud, that's not the end of the story. Your customers are there. Hopefully they're going to be there and stick to you for a very, very long time. So now you've got to go do maintenance and service those customers in an ongoing basis.
So you know what? Probably one of the most annoying things that you have to do when you own the infrastructure is actually having to deal with Windows updates and all these things and dealing with all the issues around it and draining the customers and whatever else you need to do in order to do that. Another thing also is the big hit you get from a cumulative update syndrome. You have your image prepared on a virtual machine, but you prepared it 6 months ago. In the meantime, you received I don't know how many updates through Windows Update. Now you go to provision that image. The first thing you do, you get this cascading hit of Windows updates you have to go through in order to actually get this enabled. Azure does it for you. You always get a fresh, most up-to-date image of SQL Server and Windows just ready for you to go. So you take that pain out of the equation, and you can only focus, just like Serenic was talking about, Brandon from Serenic, is you focus only on your IP. You don't have to think about platform. You think about what value you can deliver to the customer.
So we just wanted to take you on kind of a brief journey through the opportunities to use the Azure, the hosting platform, kind of all the way from before you've sold the system, all the way to maintaining it on an ongoing basis. So there's value in every step of the way of going this route. So that's probably the key message, really, of this whole session. What's the business model, what's the technology, but how do you put that together to bring value to your company and to your customers?
That's right. It's about your solutions, your IP that you have today, combining that with a tuned ERP platform for the cloud, an enterprise-grade cloud infrastructure such as Windows Azure, and providing that same IP or even improved IP in the cloud and software as a service for the customers. This should be the ERP cloud platform of choice. It's fast, it's tuned for the cloud, it's simple, a lot of things are taken care of for you, it's repeatable, it is cost-effective, secure, it's everywhere available, But the most important thing that I want to stress, which we talked about at the very beginning, you mentioned that the platforms, NAV 2013, GP 2013, are the platforms you're familiar with, ERP products familiar with. They're exactly the same platforms as you use on-prem. There's nothing different you need to know other than a few deployment, script utilization, a few things like that. But other than that, it's nothing new you need to know to take your solutions to the cloud right now. Elizabeth, you want to show us how to do that?
Sure. Maybe you could. There we go. So there's a few references that we wanted to walk you through because we know this is a lot of information and that we've only really touched the surface. We hope we've given you a good picture of what this is, but we know that for those of you who want to go pursue this more deeply, you're going to need a whole lot more information and you're going to have a whole lot more questions. And so I wanted to walk you through a few resources, and some of those resources lead to more resources because we are Microsoft and we have lots of places you can go for information. One thing is there's a cloud profitability guide. We've had it out for a couple of years. That's been updated. There's a lot of new information. There's new data. Things have changed in 2 years, as you can imagine, in the cloud. So that has been revamped and will be published next month. So look for the updated, new, improved cloud profitability guide, because obviously this just has to be part of your business. It has to be profitable and interesting to you. And this is a place to get more information, to do that analysis and see if this is a route you want to go. In addition, we've published a couple of white papers, and these white papers are a little bit more than our standard white papers. In these white papers, we've really meant to give you a basic guide. So it actually covers not just deployment, it covers the licensing side. It gives you a starting point for sizing on Azure. So there's a lot of content in each of these, and it also has links. So if you want to go learn more about Azure itself, we're obviously not reproducing in Dynamics all of that content. Azure already has it, so we point you to the right places, so you don't have to kind of wander through a lot of content on your own. Azure has a portal that's very good. It has a price calculator that's really useful. Those pointers are in there. There's videos on how to. There are additional MSDN articles. So there's just a ton of content that we've prepared to give you more information about Azure. So there's a white paper for both GP and NAV. They're slightly different in content. The NAV has a lot of... Oops, did I do that? Did you do that? Has a lot of content out on MSDN. GP has a lot of content on their local pages, on partner source. So there's a little bit of a variation between where you find things, but I think you'll find most, if not all, of what you need is out there. And then I wanted to make sure that you're all aware and ready to attend directions or the technical airlift for GP. In those events, we're going to go much deeper. So we'll go deeper into technology, we'll go deeper into pricing, we'll go deeper into licensing and all of those things at those events. More on the business side in directions, more mainly technical on the GP, technical airlift. NAV will also have the technical information at directions. So this is really, while we've launched in April, these events are where we're really going to do the kind of deep knowledge transfer that you need to go execute. And so we welcome and encourage your attendance, if cloud is your destination, to go to these events. So the candy bars are out. So I think there's some slides. Don't we need to do a drum roll or something?
We have some slides
like
to describe what's... Oh, right, yeah.
Okay, so on your mark, maybe you've already done it. Some of you are eating already. No patience in the room, right? On your mark, open your wrapper, and somewhere in there is a very special ticket. So open up, look for your ticket. I need a drum. I want to do a kind of drum roll thing. Anybody? Marco, you didn't keep it, did you? It's not in your pocket.
I don't know.
Whoa! Yay!
No, I did not. There you go. Congratulations. Do you want to do the honors?
Yeah, you can do it. You can do it as well as I can.
You're welcome.
Right.
I'll keep that, thank you.
So with that, whoops, I'm going the wrong way. We don't want to do that. So for those of you who didn't win today, you have one more chance to win, so don't miss our final session. It's about Office 365. It's in line with the conversation we had today around the cloud. Office 365 we think is a great opportunity for Dynamics partners to expand their business and expand the value that they can bring, that you can all bring to your customers. So we encourage you to go there. There's one more Surface to be won. Could be yours. Can't be yours because you already won one. So, yeah. Anyway, so with that, I think we really want to thank you for coming to this session. I will be on booth duty next, so if you have more questions and you want to have a more one-to-one type of conversation, we can certainly do that at the expo, at the Dynamics booth. And with that, I'd like to thank my co-presenter, Marco.
You're
Great
welcome.
job, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you.